Okay, Hazaka Baruch and good morning everyone. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Tuesday morning as we are studying together Parashat Vayikra. Today's class is sponsored anonymously for the Refuah Shlema of all of Am Yisrael. Hashem shall bless our sponsor with health and happiness and success, Nachat, Shalom, Chen, and all the amazing blessings of our Torah. Rabotai, our Parashat Vayikra, begins with the word Vayikra el Moshe, and God calls out to Moshe. The Gemara tells us that, matter of fact, something that most of us know, and that is that Moshe Rabbeinu actually had other names. Moshe wasn't his only name. Did you know that? Moshe had 10 names. Our rabbis tell us, as an example, Yered was one of his names, Yekutiel was one of his names, Avigdor, very good, Hever, okay, Tuvia, yeah, maybe Ariel also, okay, not sure about that one. But either way, Moshe, right? Moshe had 10 names. And a name, we know, is not something that's arbitrary. A name is not random. When parents name their child, whether it's at a Brit Milah or at the naming of a daughter at the Sefer Torah, our rabbis tell us there's a tremendous kedusha, there's a tremendous hashpa'ah, there's an amazing divine, certain level of prophecy that enters into the parents at that very moment that they're naming their child. Many times parents decided on a certain name for their child, and for some reason that can't be really explained. Last minute, as they're about to name the baby, the mother has a change of heart and she screams out a different name, a name that wasn't even agreed upon, because there's a certain, again, kedusha that is infused into the minds of the mother and the father at the naming. A name is not just a label. A name is not just something that we give to a child, just how to refer to him. A name, the word in Hebrew for name is Shem. Shem, related to the other word in Hebrew with the same letters, Sham. Sham means over there. So the same way the Sham tells you the location of something, Shem tells you its essence. You know, we have a custom, matter of fact, after the Amidah, many people have this beautiful minhag to say a pasuk right before they take the 3 steps back at the end of the Amidah. And this pasuk is meant to begin and end with the first and last letters of a person's name. So as an example, many Sidurim, by the way, in the back they have it. They have almost every possible combination. Aleph, 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 Hey. Whatever your name is, you'll find a pasuk. So as an example, pasuk, Eliyahu, Ashrei she'el Yaakov be'ezro, Sibro al Adonai Elohav. So the pasuk begins with the letter Aleph, Ashrei, and it ends with the letter Vav, Elohav. And that's the first and last letter of the word, of the name, Eliyahu. So again, why do people do this? Why do we say a pasuk? Because again, it goes back to the point that my name is not just a label. It's not just you are Ariel, or you are Sarah, or you are Rahel, or Yosef. You are a pasuk. You have a mission, you have a purpose. There is something here that God sent us down to this world to achieve and to accomplish. And a lot of times, our name has a very big part of that, okay? It doesn't mean that all Joeys have to be accountants now, you know what I mean? There's obviously a lot of other more important factors that decide what a person's mission is. But a name is very, very important, okay? Rav Chaim Shmulevitz explained, by the way, that is why Moshe had 10 names. Because Moshe was such a personality that in order to capture his essence, we needed 10 different names. That was the caliber that Moshe Rabbeinu was on. But whatever it is, 10 names, but which one does God pick? At the end of the day, the parasha begins, Vayikra el Moshe. He calls out to which name? Which name does God pick to call him, to refer to him by? He calls him by Moshe. He doesn't call him Yered. He doesn't call him Avisocho. Doesn't call him Yekutiel or Hever. All the other 9 names. Many beautiful names and many accomplishments. As an example, Yered, from the word Yarad. He brought down the Torah to the Jewish people. Hever, from the word Haver, connection. Haber, right? What does Haber mean? The last name Haber. Haver is to connect. Moshe Rabbeinu connected the people to their Father in heaven. Which name does God choose to refer to him? He doesn't pick any of those names. You know which name he picks? He picks Moshe. Vayikra el Moshe. All the time, Moshe. Why Moshe? Who gave him that name, by the way? Where did he get that name? What does Moshe mean? Moshe comes from the word Kimin Hamayim Meshitihu. Batya, okay, a non-Jew, gave him that name. She calls him Moshe because she drew him from the water. In English, we have a name, Drew. Okay, I don't know, maybe that's where it comes from. Okay, maybe Drew is the equivalent of Moshe. But she drew him, and that's why she calls him Moses. And therefore, God says, you know how I'm going to refer to you? I'm going to call you also by the name of Moshe. And the question today we're going to try to figure out is why. Of all names, why does God dwell? Why does God pick? Why does God favor this specific name? Again, it's not even his accomplishment. It's an accomplishment of Batya. It's what she did. She drew him. Maybe we should give her credit. We should call her son Moshe. We're calling this guy Moshe, and that's the only name that God refers to him by. Why? There are many answers really to this question, but today we're going to keep it short. We're gonna jump to an answer that's based on a very powerful Gemara in Masechet Nedarim. Okay, Masechet Nedarim, page 38, tells us that if one wants to be a prophet, if you want to be a prophet, anyone here want to be a prophet? Anyone have that in their bucket list? Okay, if you do, yeah, you, Marie. Okay, so if you do, and you want to be a Navi, okay, so no problem. You just need a few things, and you'll get Nevuah. Okay, again today it's going to be very hard because the gates, the doors of Nevuah were sealed. We don't have prophecy anymore. The same time that the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed and we lost the temptation for idolatry, which is why no one here really is running to go bow down to a tree after this class, because we don't have that temptation. Although in the Tanakh, we read story after story of all the people that bowed down and how Israel was flooded with idolatry. Today we don't have that temptation, not because we're better than them, not because they were primitive, but the rabbis were able to successfully pray to remove and annul this drive, this desire for idolatry. So we have today idolatry in other ways, but the original, the bowing down, worshipping idols idolatry is no longer. And at that same time, we lost the ability to attain prophecy. Always, the rule is there has to be a balance, like a seesaw. If two people go on a seesaw, if they're not equal in weight, one side's going to go up and the other side's going to go down. When it comes to Tum'ah versus Tahara, to pure versus impure, to holy versus profane, the forces of good and evil in the world always have to be equal. There has to be a fair playing field. And that's why when idolatry is abolished, at the same time, prophecy has to be abolished. It's not fair to have so much weight on the side of good and too little on the side of evil. Then it wouldn't be a fair fight, so to speak. And the whole purpose of why we're here and what we're here to accomplish in this world would be for nothing. So really, technically today, you can't be a prophet, unfortunately. But the Gemara goes through what are the features, what are the characteristics that a Navi has to have. Okay, so let's go through some of them. Okay, you ready, everyone? Number one, if you want to be a Navi, if Hashem is going to rest his presence on someone, number one, you have to be strong. Okay, who's still in? All of us, we're still good? Okay, we're all strong? Okay, good. Next, number two, you got to be smart. Okay, we're still all good? Okay, number three, you have to be rich. If you want prophecy, you have to be rich, ashir. And number four, you got to be humble. Okay? Person to receive nevuah needs four things. The Gemara lists them. Now the truth is that when we say strong and rich and smart, we're not talking about literal wealth or IQ or physical strength, right? These are really not in our control all the time, right? Wisdom and knowledge and IQ, wealth, these come from Hashem, right? A person's born with these gifts. And it wouldn't be fair if God says as a prerequisite to prophecy, you have to be rich, if richness and wealth is not really up to me. So that's why majority of the commentaries, almost all of them, really explain that when the Gemara says you have to be rich, it doesn't mean literal wealth, how much money, how many zeros you have in your bank account. What it means is, like our rabbis tell us in Pirkei Avot beautifully in chapter 4, Ezehu ashir hasameach bechelko. Who is the rich man? He who is happy with their lot. When the Gemara says that you need to be rich, it means you have to be happy, content. Who is the strong man? Ezehu gibor. Hakovesh et yitzro. He who conquers his evil inclination. Strength is not measured by how much we can control others, but by how well we can control ourselves. Okay? Gibor, Ashir, Chacham is not IQ. When it says to be smart, it means, like the rabbis tell us again, Ezehu Hacham Halomed Mikol Adam. Who is this wise man? He who learns from everybody, who is constantly curious and seeking to grow and to learn more. So when the Gemara says that you need these attributes, it's referring to the strong in character, it's referring to happy with your lot, it's referring to smart and constantly learning from other people. And really that's what the Rambam says. When the Rambam codifies this Gemara, Halachot Yesodei HaTorah, chapter 7, the Rambam says explicitly, Gibor means Gibor b'midotav, strong in his attributes, strong in his character. So that is simply what the Gemara is saying, and that's definitely the correct maybe approach. However, many do try to read this in a literal way, that in order to receive prophecy, you have to, very good by the way, yes, correct, to receive prophecy you have to be besimcha, you have to always be happy. Okay, but many do try to say that it's literal, that you need to be actual rich, you have to actually be smart, you have to actually be strong physically. Again, I don't know how much that is, 50 pounds, 100 pounds, 50 push-ups, I'm not sure what the criteria is. But the Mahasha just wants to know, why does God care about that? Since when does one have to be rich to be, since when is wealth important in Hashem's eyes? We don't ever care about a person's wallet. We care about a person's character. We care about how much chesed a person does. All of a sudden, to be a prophet, Hashem's interested that you should be wealthy. Hashem cares that you should have a six-pack, you should be strong. Why does that matter? Now again, a judge, a shofet, needs to be strong. And that makes sense, by the way. Why a judge should be strong, why a judge should be wealthy. A judge who's judging people has to be someone who cannot be bribed. We have to make sure that he's judging fairly. If he's not rich, so when a wealthy guy comes in to be judged for arbitration, he may be a little bit influenced by the person's wealth. He may be bribed by the fellow. So that's why it's important for a judge, I understand. But a Navi is not judging the people necessarily. So why does he have to be rich? And the Mahasha answers, something very powerful. And he says that ultimately, really from the whole list, there's only one thing Hashem cares about. He doesn't care about rich, he doesn't care about strong or even IQ. The only midah that matters to be a prophet, and really, this is maybe the most important midah. If your son or daughter asked you, Mom, Dad, what's one thing I should work on? One thing I should work on, I only want to work on one thing. One trait. Of course, depends on the stage of life and how old they are, but in general, if there's one midah that's the root of all, there's one character trait that we could work on, that we must work on. Take a guess, anyone? Give it a couple of seconds. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh baro. Okay, very good. The answer is humility. Anava. To be humble. Okay? The worst thing that Hashem despises more than any other flaw is arrogance. When a person is arrogant, Pasuk says, To'avat Hashem kol gevalev. God despises the arrogant person. Now really, it's not that God despises him, but really quite the contrary. He despises God. When a person's arrogant and full of themselves and all they think about is themselves, and the ego just blocks and clouds everything, every decision they ever make in their life is only about what's best for me and myself. That person, there's no room for God in their mind, in their lives. What? Wash my hands? What? Keep kosher? What? Keep Shabbat? What? Be honest? Who said? God said. Who cares about God? I don't believe in God. It's all about me. What's best for me? There's no room for anyone else when a person is arrogant. Every negative trait ultimately really can be rooted in humility. So as an example, when two people are fighting and one person doesn't want to apologize to the other, right? Let them come to me. They're always starting with me, right? So machloket, fighting, hatred. These are always ignited. These are fueled by arrogance, by ego, jealousy. Jealousy is fueled by ego. When a person is jealous, why are we jealous? That person has more money, or they have better children, or they have a bigger house, or more vacations, or whatever it is that we're jealous of. Their fame, their friend, everything, right? Because we have an ego that tells us we should have those things. I should be driving that car. I should be going on those Pesach programs. I should be living in a house like that. It should be me. When a person has the ego, jealousy comes in, fighting comes in. So really, if there's one midah that we need to work on, it's humility. Now again, humility is the most misunderstood trait, by the way. Anava, to be humble, doesn't mean to not know what you're good at. It doesn't mean that you should think you're zero. People think, oh, humble, I'm zero, I'm nothing, I'm nobody. Just to completely nullify myself, to just go through life, zero, never to peak, never to come out, never to surface. That's not what humility is. People that are humble, opposite. Humility goes hand in hand with self-esteem. God doesn't want us to have a low self-image. He doesn't want us to think that we're worthless, that we're good for nothing. That's not what humility is. Moshe Rabbeinu, who was one of the most humble people ever, I guarantee you every day when he woke up, he knew exactly who he was. He knew what his strengths were. He knew what he was capable of. He knew what his kochot. He knew he was the best. Moshe Rabbeinu knew he was the best. If you go to a good chazan and you say, hello, let me tell you, you have such a good voice. And the chazan says back, no, I don't. It's not me. That's not humility. That's called lying. Right? Person must know what they're good at. Person has to realize where their strengths lay, where they lie, so that they can really give and accomplish and achieve and succeed. Humility is when a person understands that what I have is a gift from Hashem. I shouldn't feel superior to other people because of my money, or because of my wisdom, because of my knowledge. I shouldn't feel better than other people if I'm more religious than them, right? A lot of times we look down at other people. Who do they think they are to talk to me? They're not in my league. I'm smarter than them, or I'm better looking than them, or I'm richer than them, or I'm more religious than them, right? When we're better than other people in certain areas, we feel superior. That feeling is arrogance. Humility means to realize and to recognize that any of my skills, any of the gifts that I have are exactly that, gifts from Hashem. And if Hashem would have given the person next to me those brains, they would have maybe done even more with them. Imagine a bird were to fly down. Just imagine, okay? A bird were to come and say, look at you, silly humans, walking with your 2 feet. Ha ha ha, I have wings. I can fly. I'm so much better than you. What would you say to the bird? Obviously, don't talk to a bird, right? That's a problem. But what would you say if you had to? What would you say to that bird? Say what? What you feel better than me because you could fly? Of course you can fly. You have wings. I don't have wings. If I had wings, I would fly faster than you. I would be better than you. So that really is what a person needs to remind themselves. That, I feel superior because I have a high IQ. I'm smarter. I'm quicker. But we have to remember, Hashem gave us that ability. And if God gave it to my wife, or to my husband, or to my employees, or to other people around me, they would actually probably be able to use that IQ and do even better and greater things than I am. When a person thinks like that, they are infused with humility, with anava. But Rabotai, there are 2 types of humble people. So let's just recap. To be a Navi, you have to be humble. And by the way, the greater the humility, the greater the prophet. That's why the greatest prophet ever was Moshe. It wasn't a coincidence that he was also the most humble person ever. They go hand in hand, humility and prophecy. But there are 2 types of humble people, Rabotai. One guy is naturally humble. Why? Because they have nothing to be arrogant about. right? Some people, they are humble, but they don't have money to have the ego. They don't have good looks. They don't have strength. They're not so smart. So of course they're humble. What do you expect of the guy? The Gemara says the most pathetic thing is a dal ge'eh. A pauper who's arrogant is so pathetic. You're arrogant? About what? You have nothing. Golda Meir said it best. You know what she said? She said, here's the line. You ready? Don't be so humble. You're not that great. Right? Don't be so humble. You're not that great. So, there are people they're humble, but they have nothing to be arrogant about. But then you have someone, you ready for this? Then you have the guy who technically can be arrogant. He should be full of himself because he is rich. She is smart. They are good looking. Now when that person is humble, that's amazing. That's true humility. That's real. Because I have every reason to not be. I can be I can feel superior. I can feel better. God blessed me. When we're blessed and we're still humble, that's what Hashem really wants. That's true humility. In our lives, there are days or maybe weeks, there are moments. Life is not a straight line. Life is like a wave, ups and downs and ups and downs. There are days that we're riding the high wave. Life's great. Everyone's complimenting us. Everything's going well. Shalom Bayit's amazing. Our children are calling home and we're doing well in business and the money's coming in and we're getting invited to all the parties and everyone's complimenting us, right? So we have moments in life that life's great. Everything's amazing. Baruch Hashem. And then there are moments in life that we're on the other side. No one's respecting us. Shalom Bayit's disaster. Our kids are disrespectful. We're getting business is we're losing so much money, and life stinks. It's very easy to be humble when we're in those low points. Of course we're humble. What's there to be arrogant about? For the true greatness of man is measured not when they're humble and poor, but when they're humble and rich. When we have the milestones in our lives, when we have the successful moments in our lives, when we have the things in our lives that are going well and great, and we're promoted and we're given a raise and money's coming in and everything's well and going amazing. And in those moments, in those days, to feel humble, that's greatness. That's true humility. Not when we're low, but when we're high. That's what the Gemara means. The Gemara says that to be a prophet, you have to be rich and humble. Not poor and humble. To be poor and humble is easy. But what it means is when we're feeling rich, when we're feeling strong, when we're feeling smart in those moments, in those high moments of our lives, to be able to take a step back and remember the source of our strength. It doesn't mean, again, to not appreciate what our capabilities are. By no way, shape, or form. God forbid, has v'shalom. We have to know what we're capable of, 100%. But when we're feeling rich and strong and smart, to still remain humble, that is very powerful. Our rabbis tell us that although Moshe was the most humble person, there were people that were very close behind him. As an example, Avot, there's an opinion in the Gemara that the Avot were maybe more humble than Moshe. There's an opinion that Aharon was maybe more humble than Moshe. Now there are two types of humility. Now again, it's hard to really appreciate this. If the Torah says that Moshe was the most humble guy, so how could the Gemara come and suggest that, no, maybe Aharon was more? Maybe Avot were more. Aharon was, forget about it. You know how amazing, how great Aharon was? Aharon, when he found out that Moshe was picked to be the leader, what was his response? V'samach belibo. He was happy. He was ecstatic. He was filled with joy. Go find me someone like that today. That their younger brother is going to get more successful than them, and they could actually be happy for their brother with zero bitterness, zero envy, zero hatred. That's greatness. Aharon, if you ask me, maybe is greater than Moshe in humility. But no, at the end of the day, the cake, the prize goes to Moshe. Why? And again, going back to the point, Because it's one thing when someone's humble and they began from humble beginnings. That's very easy. You know, there are some people, I'll tell you a true story. My in-laws, they started off their marriage in Edmonton. My father-in-law was in Kollel, and the Germazians brought them in to try to start a Kollel community. They wanted to try to start a Jewish community. And of course, the foundation, the base of every Jewish community is and has always been Torah. If you have Torah as a foundation, then you can build on it. If there's no Torah in a community, this community is going to die out very, very quickly. So they brought in 10 Kollel families to try to start and kick off this amazing community in Edmonton that they were trying to build. And my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, they were one of those 10 couples. And my mother-in-law, till today, she recalls and she remembers how she drove. She says they brought us in, they took care of our housing, they took care of our tuition, they gave us a car, they took care of everything. They gave us a salary. She says, I drove a nicer car than Mr. Germazian himself. He drove a post office truck, an old, no longer used post office truck. Could you imagine? All the Avrechim are driving nicer cars than Mr. Germazian, the guy who's supporting and financing the entire community. It's very powerful. It's very beautiful. That's amazing. We love when we see things like that. I remember one time as well when I was in a synagogue, and there was a certain guy in this community, not here, but a different community, and there was this guy. If you saw him, the way he dressed, very modest. If you walked into his house, I guarantee you, you would pull out $5 and you would give it to him tzedakah. That's the type of house this guy had. You would think he was collecting. Very, very, very worse than humble, worse than modest house. Okay. Anyways, big family. You don't judge the guy. Anyways, one day I was in the synagogue and I see him in the lobby, and he's pacing and he's nervous. He's looking around. Where are they? They're late. He looks at me, he says, Mizrahi, you going to be here for longer? I said, I'm going to be here for a few minutes. He's like, okay, these couple of rabbis from Israel are coming. They're expecting to see me. I have to give them a check, but I have to go. My chavruta is waiting. So here are 2 checks for them. Give it to them when they come. I said, okay. He excused himself. He left. 30 seconds after he leaves, the 2 rabbis, they come running in. Where is he? Oh no, we missed him. He left. So I said to them, are you looking for so-and-so? They said, yes. So I'm holding the 2 checks. I said, here, he left these for you. And I have to be honest, I was very tempted the whole time to look at the peak, how much is inside. A little, just flip the page a little bit, look at the numbers. But I said, it's not my check. It's not honest. It's not for me to look. It's not for me to know. Okay. How much could this guy be giving already, right? Anyways, I hand the guys the checks, and they were so eager to open it. They didn't even turn around. They opened it right in front of my face like this. They just opened the check. Now I'm like, all right, Hashem, I give up. Now you can't expect me not to look, So I take a peek down. It's right in front of me. I couldn't believe it. Okay, each check was filled out, $126,000 from this guy that you would never think. Amazing. And he didn't even wait for a thank you. He just left, he had to go learn. He was nothing. Right? We love stories like that, right? It's true humility. But I want to tell you something. When a person is born with nothing, they're raised with nothing, from day one, they're nurtured, they're raised with humility. So even though one day they end up making it, but they still dress, they still drive the way they drove when they were younger. They still act with humility. They act with a lot of anava, but a lot of it is because that's how they grew up. That's how they were raised. It's much more difficult when a person is raised in the lap of luxury, when a person has every convenience, when the kid's going on 3, 4, 5 vacations a year, when the kid has the best education, when the kid grows up with a chauffeur. Just imagine someone like that. For that person to be humble, for the parents to give and instill in that kid the values of humility, that technically from day one, he's killing it and he had every right and reason to grow up arrogant. And he remains humble. That is so powerful. And really with this, we understand what was the difference between Aharon and Moshe. Aharon was humble. No mistake about it. The Avot were humble. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, all of them. They had tremendously humble traits. But, there's one flaw in their humility, and that is that they were born with all of the problems that life had to offer. Avraham dealing with all the things, his challenges. Yitzchak dealing with Ishmael. Yaakov, he had his things with Lavan and Esav. Each one, Aharon was growing up in exile and slavery and torture. So yes, you are humble, but it's easy relatively for you to be humble. You know what's difficult? When you got a kid like Moshe. Moshe, who was raised in a palace. Moshe, who was brought in by none other than Batya herself, the king's daughter, the princess. She brings you into the palace. She brings you into the lap of Paro. You're raised with the best teachers. You're raised learning royalty. You're raised with the best foods and all the conveniences that life has to offer. When that person, Moshe Rabbeinu, from day one wealthy, no pain, no struggling, when he's humble, that is another level. That is wonderful. That is amazing. And so yes, Avot, Aharon were humble, but Moshe was humble even though he had nothing to be humble about. You know, a lot of people could be humble because they had humble beginnings. Person remembers, I grew up, and it brings them back to reality. It brings out the human in them. When we remember, I was once poor, it makes us a little bit more empathetic. But when you're a guy like Moshe, that you didn't have poor, you don't know what poverty means. You don't know what it means to go to bed without dinner. You don't know what it means to not have the best clothing and the best, teachers and arts and whatever it is, vacations, everything. That's very fabulous. And so we go back and we answer our question. Why does, of all the names, what name does God pick? What name does Hashem pick to call Moshe? He picks the name Moshe. Vayikra el Moshe. You know why he picks the name Moshe? Because the name Moshe was always a beautiful reminder to Hashem that he was drawn from the water by Batya straight into a palace. He grew up in the lap of luxury. Moshe, when God said Moshe, it reminded him of who Moshe was. Technically, Moshe could have been, should have been, would have been arrogant. But he wasn't. Moshe remained humble. There was no hubris. There was no ga'ava. And when a person like that remains humble to God, that's so precious. And that's why God always calls him by the name Moshe. So this is, I think, something very powerful, something for us to remember. That it's easy to be humble when we have humble beginnings. It's easy for us to be humble when there's nothing to be arrogant about. When we're poor, or when we're in a poor state of life, or when we at least feel poor, or we feel weak, or we feel dumb. In those moments, it's very easy to remain empathetic and humble, etc. But to be humble when we're riding the highs of life, that's what Hashem demands. So next time we're successful in any area, we have to make sure to remind ourselves and realize that we're only successful, we're only smart, we're only rich, we're only strong because Hashem gave these things to me. And I'm just lucky. And really, if Hashem would have given it to someone else, who knows, they would maybe be more accomplished than we are. And when we remember this, when we realize that God blessed us, so opposite, we're not arrogant, but we're filled with humility, and we realize that now we must bless other people. We'll stop over here. Have a wonderful day. God willing, we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.